Do you feel anxious and overwhelmed when things don't go according to plan? Do you find yourself wanting to plan out every little detail and feel uncomfortable letting go of control? Anxiety can result in behaviors such as wanting to feel in control, especially in situations that provoke fear and anxiety. Whether it is controlling your environment, the people around you, or the way things are done, taking control can feel satisfying in the moment, but in the long run can result in negative consequences, such as in your relationships, at work, and more stress. In this episode, you'll learn why your need for control is a consequence of anxiety and what to do about it. This is episode number 129, Why Your Need for Control is Actually a Consequence of Your Anxiety. Welcome to Calmly Coping. My name is Tati Garcia, and I'm a licensed therapist and coach specializing in high-functioning anxiety. I help high achievers overcome anxiety, stress, and overwhelm so they can finally stop overthinking everything and feel calm, balanced, and confident from within. If this topic interests you, then please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I release a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I saw a comment in my Facebook community, Calmly Coping, that kind of triggered or prompted this episode. Had it in the back of my mind for a while, but somebody had mentioned, the little traits that she thought were her had a reason. For example, being early, being organized, getting irritated easily, and taking over just to try and prevent me feeling overwhelmed. And so this is in relation to how those traits were actually a sign of high functioning anxiety. And so that I think can be an example of how our behaviors can sometimes serve a function to help us feel as though, in the case of having control and needing to be in control in situations, feeling as though you have some semblance of certainty and control over the situations in your life when you feel anxious and uncertain otherwise. So I want to give you some examples of what it might look like when you feel like you need to be in control, because this can show up differently and look different from person to person. So one way might be a super structured schedule to the point where you might be rigid with things and things need to happen a certain way or at a certain time. And then if they don't, you feel completely thrown off, you feel frustrated, anxious, overwhelmed, and that has a negative impact on your mood and on your day. Another thing can be just, wanting things to be in order. So maybe if that is wanting things to be cleaned a certain way or organized a certain way or done a certain way. So having a particular way of doing things or wanting things to be done can be another way of feeling like you have control over things. Maybe it could be controlling other people. So wanting to control the way other people do things, the way that they say things, the way that they help you or support you. So any kind of example of controlling other people and the way that they behave or the way that they do things. It could be a fear of delegating to others or asking others for help in situations because you feel like if I ask for help, then I'm not going to have control over what happens. It could be a fear of being in a situation or circumstances where you don't personally have control. So let's say one example could be if you're the passenger in a car on an airplane, having anxiety or feeling anxious because you don't directly have control in that situation. Even though, if we're thinking of that situation, there are so many things that could happen that even if you had control, you may still not have 100% and you won't ever have 100% control. Not to say that something bad's going to happen, but just the reality that in any situation, there is some level of uncertainty. But we try to take control in order to help ourselves feel better, help ourselves feel more certainty in a situation where there really isn't certainty. Another example could be over planning things. So like excessively planning and overthinking things because you want to make sure things are done a certain way and that you're prepared for things, or maybe you want things to be done the quote unquote right way, even though there is no actual right way many times. So these are just some examples of how the need for control might show up in your life and in your behaviors. Now, why is it that you might struggle with needing control or feeling like you need to have control in situations? And how is that related to anxiety? That's because many times there is actually fear that's occurring under the surface. So it could be that fear of uncertainty that I mentioned previously. So when we don't know what's going to happen or we're afraid that something bad might happen, and so there's possibilities for negative outcomes, we might feel like, well, I need to control the things that I can control so that I can prevent something bad from happening, even though in many, if not all situations, there is some degree of uncertainty that we have 0% control over. But feeling like we can take control over what we have control over can help us feel more comfortable in certain situations. So it can give us what I like to call with anxiety a false sense of control. So this happens a lot with overthinking things or worrying about things where we feel this false sense of security, like if I just think about this enough, then I'll be prepared just in case this bad thing happens. When in reality, this isn't preparing you anymore for something bad to happen. It's just actually making you feel more stressed and more anxious. And the same thing can happen when we are trying to take control in situations where we in reality do not have control over the outcomes. We actually are causing more stress and anxiety for ourselves and making things more challenging because we are mentally rehearsing and preparing for something bad to happen that may or may not happen. So another reason could be just a fear of the unknown or the unexpected. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the uncertainty. So, not knowing what to expect, not knowing certain variables in a situation or what could go wrong. And so, another reason why we might struggle with needing control is perfectionism. And so, this can be coming from that place of the example that I gave of needing things to be done the right way. So, viewing things in all or nothing terms. So, either you're a failure or you're perfect or something's done a perfect way. And so that rigidity in looking at things and needing things to be done the perfect way or the right way, many times we can have our own perspective of things and think, well, this is the best way to do things or this is the right way to do things, when in reality, that is just one opinion in a situation. And perfection in at the end of the day does not exist, but perfectionism can be another driver of that need for control in situations. And then when it comes to controlling others, some examples could be overprotection. So maybe it's of a child or a partner or even of a parent. So that can be really coming from a place of fear of I don't want something bad to happen to this person or them to be in a situation where they could be potentially exposed to danger or threats, or I don't want to be rejected or have my trust betrayed if it's in a relationship. So that need for control can show up really as many times a consequence of fear. And other times it can show up, let's say, if you want to control the way somebody behaves or you feel nervous when they behave a certain way, especially in front of other people, that could be maybe a fear of judgment. So maybe you feel as though this person's behavior is a reflection of you. Many times we can feel that way with children, with partners, with parents, again, those close relationships. And so, if somebody behaves in a way that you feel uncomfortable with or that you fear other people may judge, you may have the tendency to want to judge or control that person to prevent a negative outcome. So, again, these are just some examples of how this can show up in different situations. So, there can be many negative consequences that occur as a result of that need for control. It can have a strain on relationships, especially if it is affecting, you're controlling other people or feeling that need for control or the way that they do things. It can result in just for you personally, you might have difficulty letting go of control and just relaxing in situations. It can feel like there's this constant pressure and weight on you to be doing things a certain way or to be following a certain schedule or whatever it might be. And so that can make it harder for you to relax, not just physically, but also mentally, because there's always so much going on in your mind. You may also struggle with anticipatory anxiety. So that is when, in anticipation of something happening, you're kind of gearing up for it and worrying about it and overthinking things. And you might also struggle with allowing things to happen in their own time. So you may try to force things because you want to prevent something bad from happening, or you may avoid things altogether because of this need for control that's coming from a place of fear. It can result in you being inflexible and rigid. And so as a result, it can be really hard to make plans with other people, or you may take it personally or find it difficult to cope if people change plans last minute, or if anything happens that's outside of what you had anticipated or you had mentally planned for, or the way that you wanted things to be. And then it can also result in overloading yourself. If you struggle with letting go of control and delegating and asking for help, you may take too much on because you feel as though I need to do it all because I'm the only person who can do it the right way, or, it needs to be done in this specific way and I need to have 100% control of the situation. So that's going to result in you feeling potentially burnt out and overwhelmed. And maybe you could also spend excess time on things that truly don't matter and that are just going to create more stress for you. So if you feel like things need to be done a particular way, maybe you're spending more time on these activities or doing these things because of that need for control, when really it's not necessary. It's not getting you any further ahead. It's not helping you to accomplish the things that you want, but it's just you're focusing on these excess details that in the long run may not matter, may not influence the bigger picture. So up next, I'm going to talk about two of the most misused terms in mental health. Before that, though, I want to quickly talk about my free workshop to help you overcome high functioning anxiety. So if you can resonate with any of the examples I gave previously, and if you are a high achiever who's struggling with anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, then this workshop is perfect for you, because I walk you step by step through how to feel more calm, balanced, and confident from within, to help you stop overthinking things, to help you create improved work-life balance, and to help you feel more confident from within. So you can access this workshop and watch it on demand at calmlycoping.com/workshop. So now, two of the most misused terms in mental health are OCD and bipolar. I'm not going to get into bipolar today because it's not applicable to this episode, but when it comes to OCD, which stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, I hear people talking about this so much. So I hear people saying things like, I'm so OCD because they need things organized a particular way, or they need things to be super neat and clean. And the reason why I'm saying that this is misused is that people often conflate being organized and being particular with obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a mental health diagnosis. So the difference here is that wanting things to be organized, wanting things to be a certain way can be a preference. It can be a personality preference. It can be maybe the way that you were raised. It could be many things that is not necessarily a mental health disorder that has a negative impact on your day-to-day functioning. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a serious mental health diagnosis that people who struggle with and experience these obsessions and this need to engage in these compulsions that can be oftentimes so intrusive and so uncomfortable and so overwhelming that it has a negative impact on their day-to-day functioning. So obsessions can be things such as, I need to check the doorknob a certain amount of times before I can leave the house, or if I don't do this thing, then something bad is going to happen. So it can be these really intrusive thoughts that may not make logical sense, but they feel so overwhelming and so pertinent and something that's really real for the person, that then they need to engage in this specific compulsion depending upon what that behavior is. So it could be, like I mentioned, checking the lock. It could be having things organized in a particular way. And I think that's why many times people confuse the two. People can have traits that are similar to behaviors that occur in OCD, but that does not mean that you have obsessive compulsive disorder. And if you think that you may have that, then your best bet is to see a mental health professional in your area, let them know your concerns, and they could potentially give you a diagnosis. So when it comes to OCD, it's something that is really uncomfortable and coming from a place of strong fear and anxiety. And it feels like if you don't engage in that compulsion, if you don't reassure yourself and say, let me check to make sure this mole isn't cancer or something like that, or let me check the doorknob to make sure it's not locked, or let me make sure that things are organized in a certain way, then you're going to feel intense anxiety and distress. With that out of the way, so I just wanted to clarify that there because I know there's often a confusion. I want to talk about what you can do if you find that the need for control is showing up in your life, is coming from a place of anxiety and is coming from a place of fear and anxiety, and you're not sure what to do next. So the first step is awareness. So I want you to really start to become more aware of how you are trying to take control in certain areas of your life. And maybe this can include asking other people, like asking your loved ones or those close to you or your colleagues, and paying attention to the things they say. If they say to you, man, you're so controlling, or if they complain about you needing things done a certain way or whatever it might be, kind of rather than reacting to that, which that can often be the tendency, try and listen and become curious about it and see, okay, what's going on here and why am I engaging in this behavior? And that's step 2, is really getting to the root of why are you engaging in this type of need for control. Looking at, what is the fear here? What are you afraid of happening? And what is the worst that could happen if you don't have control in this situation? What if things didn't go the way that you anticipated? What are you afraid of going wrong? So this can be something you can journal on or just reflect upon, like what is really happening here, like digging into that rather than just mindlessly engaging in this behavior on autopilot, which is what the tendency can often be. So then I want you to practice letting go of control one step at a time. So this can be small baby steps, and doing that way is even better because it's going to help you to feel more comfortable going out of your comfort zone. That's the only way that you're going to teach your brain that it's okay to not have 100% control in situations, and you can tolerate the discomfort that comes when you feel like you don't have control or when you feel like things aren't done a certain way. You're able to cope with that, and when you cope with that, when you can tolerate that anxiety and that discomfort, you're teaching yourself, I'm capable of handling this, and you're going to be in a place where you're able to be more flexible with how things are. And that's going to ultimately help you to manage the stress that comes up in day-to-day life, manage the difficult situations more positively. Here's an example. So let's say you want your desk to be organized a certain way, and you're out of the office one day and a colleague has to come in and use your desk, and you come in and things are out of order and they're disorganized, and you get really annoyed and frustrated and anxious, and it really bothers you. So rather than maybe judging the person, which can be the tendency mentally, or putting things back in order, see if you can just sit with that discomfort, keep things the way that they are, keep them disorganized. If it's, let's say, having dirty dishes in the sink, keep it that way. And see if you can just sit with and tolerate not having control in that situation, not having order, and notice what that feels like. Every time that you do that and you allow yourself to be with that and just be with those feelings and just tolerate that, you're actually rewiring your brain and teaching your brain that this is something that I can tolerate and I can handle, and it's going to allow you to cope with those kinds of situations in the future so that you can step away from needing control in these situations, which often just creates more stress for you. Another tip is to just get support when you need it. So let's say this could be support from a colleague, letting them know, I'm really trying to work on this. Is this something that you can help me out with? Or a partner, can you point out when you notice that I'm being controlling? Or just reaching out to a therapist or a coach or a community that can help to support you while you're making these changes. So your action tip for this week is to practice letting go in one small way. And I'd love to hear what that way is for you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment below and let me know how you're planning on practicing letting go of control in your life. And I'd love for you to join in the conversation in my free Facebook community, Calmly Coping, for high achievers struggling with high functioning anxiety. You can join us by going to calmlycoping.com/group. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question. What does the need for control look like for you, and how does it show up? While you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. So be sure to check out these episodes here. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time, be calm.